What is mind processing? By Venerable Rungruang Papassaro, Dr. Rungruang Limchoopatipa. When stimulus from the world makes contact with each particular sensing receptor at the 6 sense bases, sensing signals as pieces of information are transmitted and integrated throughout networks of neurons at the central nervous system. These starting signals of image, sounds, smell, etc. form up a mental phenomenon of something imaginarily occurring inside the mind. Then consciousness will fetch such an object of consciousness to be aware of what it is in perception frame by frame, and then because of the continuity of a stream of consciousness, the persistence of perception on these frames constructs a matter, or a story, or an internal event happening inside the mind. For example, after a stimulus makes contact through 6 sense bases, then feeling rises. After the feeling arises, the mind struggles with craving. This series of mental conditions based on the 6 sense bases, contact, feeling, and craving constitutes a mind processing. Moreover, each one of these mental phenomena occurs in sequential order dependently on the previous mental phenomenon. Therefore, this series is specifically called the process of dependent origination. The process of dependent origination will drive the mind to proceed through the cycle of operations in many rounds, making the matter more and more complicated. In a special case when dreaming, the mind will internally retrieve data from memory as a starting point of the mind processing, making it appear to be real in a dream. As a matter of fact, dreaming is similar to thinking. The only difference is that thinking happens while awake, but dreaming happens while sleeping. From a neuroscience perspective, we can explain that when stimuli from the world make contact with receptors at the 6 sense bases, sensing signals are transmitted into the central nervous system through the gray areas of the occipital lobe and parietal lobe to make a perception of what is happening before sending the signal to the hypothalamus of the limbic system to arouse feeling, and then sending the signal to the prefrontal cortex while retrieving memory from the hippocampus for the thinking process. The route of signal processing from one cluster of neurons to another is called a brain pathway, representing the pathway of signal processing throughout the central nervous system. While signals are transmitted along the courses of various networks of neurons, each specific neuron will release specific types of neurotransmitters, causing the arising of mental phenomena happening inside the central nervous system. A consciousness will fetch the attention of signals with the highest frequency as the objects of consciousness one by one at the speed of 40 Hz, making a persistence of perception of the object of consciousness, as we realize what is happening inside the mind continuing in dynamic motion. A series of arising objects of consciousness reflects a series of states of mind happening inside the mind processing. Without having sophisticated scientific equipment like fMRI to observe the signal processing inside the central nervous system, the Buddha made use of mindfulness to be aware of every arising state of mind one by one to understand the nature of each of them, and discovered that each state of mind was impermanent, deteriorating, and no self. After that, he reviewed the relationship of each one of them due to its cause and effect, and then he constructed a series of interrelationships among various states of mind in sequential dependent origination order, called the process of dependent origination, on the day of the Buddha's enlightenment. The discovery of the process of dependent origination is so important in Buddhism because it reveals a hard truth that life is just a natural process consisting of the varieties of states of mind entangling with the world. Although these states of mind take effect only on an individual person, such as when she really bodily feels happy or suffering, but there is no identity of self to be involved with such mental feeling and imagination. There is no any creator of life but nature. In addition, the process of dependent origination reveals where the origin of the problem is in mind processing, so that we can apply a proper strategy or dharma to resolve the problem rightly. In Buddhist studies, we examine the mind and its functions in detail in order to understand how the dysfunction of mind processing occurs, and if we understand the origin of the problem, then we would be able to resolve this problem correctly. In Buddhism, the mind originally, before engaging with any stimulus from the world to start a mind processing, is pure and clear from any contaminants. That is, the mind is in a neutral state of sort of emptiness, but later it is contaminated by dirt from the dysfunction of mind processing, making the mind unwholesome. This is supported by the discovery in neuroscience that each time after the releasing of neurotransmitters at synaptic transmission, all released neurotransmitters will be cleansed before starting a new batch of transmission. The mind processing is defined as a series of states of mind occurring within a specific brain pathway of mind processing in accordance with how the mind will respond to the object of consciousness. In fact, The mind processing is just a natural process of a stream of consciousness in which a particular consciousness responds to the object of consciousness and then drives for the continuation of the next consciousness by cause and effect, causing a dependent origination cycle of the operating system of the mind, which can be presented as a stream of consciousness. While signals are processing along a certain pathway passing to various clusters of neurons, a specific batch of certain neurotransmitters is released, causing a certain state of mind to happen inside the mind. As the signal passes through various clusters of neurons, several neurotransmitters are released along the brain pathway, causing a series of mental phenomena associated with the specific types of neurotransmitters. What a person feels at a particular instance is a reflection of the appearance of a specific neurotransmitter inside the central nervous system. A series of mind functions as a signal processing through the various parts of the central nervous system. As the signal is transmitted from one cluster of neurons to another one along a brain pathway, a batch of certain neurotransmitters is released, reflecting a certain state of mind that makes us feel whatever it is. Examples are as follows. The states of alertness and concentration, which are caused by norepinephrine. The states of pleasure and reward motivation are caused by dopamine. The states of obsession and compulsion memory are caused by serotonin. The states of anxiety and irritability are caused by the combination of norepinephrine and serotonin. The state of sex aggression is caused by the combination of dopamine and serotonin. The state of attention is caused by the combination of dopamine and norepinephrine. A collection of various mental phenomena arises along the transmitting mental signal along the courses of brain pathways in association with the releasing of neurotransmitters, causing various states of mind in the central nervous system. Clearly, what we feel to be is nothing but the reflection of neurotransmitters. The mind is just a natural process of signal processing along various clusters of neurons in the central nervous system. As a matter of fact, when we see a beautiful picture or painting, the image that we saw stimulates the releasing of dopamine and makes us happy. However, in some persons, if serotonin is also released, then the person will feel obsession and even sexual aggression toward the image as well. We can see that although the sequel of mental activities or behavior based on cause and effect may be generally predictable, people with different information or individuality will respond to the same stimulus more or less variably from person to person. The Buddha explained that the mind has a special quality of acknowledgement, that is, to be aware of incoming stimuli from the world, and these acknowledgements can be accumulated as information of individuality, which will lead to the behavior of each person. However, each individual is teachable to be a noble person, that is, to develop instructed cognition, which will guide the courses of mind processing in responding to the world rightly by abandoning any arising unwholesomeness. In Buddhist studies in insight observation, due to the lack of modern scientific tools and equipment to trace the signal processing along the brain pathways, the Buddha introduced an alternative way to trace mind processing by making use of mindfulness to be aware of arising states of mind one by one and then connecting them together in terms of cause and effect construction, the process of dependent origination. The description of the process of dependent origination starts with the arriving of external stimuli from the world. These signals, as external objects of consciousness, will arise, stay for a short while, then fade away immediately. However, due to the 5 aggregates subject to clinging, the mind generates a new internal object of consciousness to resume the mind processing in thinking. Especially in dreaming, the mind retrieves data from memory without any stimulus from the world at all. Still, the mind can execute internal mind processing by itself.